Good evening and welcome to the 2022 Governor's Debate, live from South Carolina ETV studios in Columbia. I'm Gavin Jackson. Joining me tonight to question the candidates is Andy Shane of the Post and Courier. With Election Day less than 2 weeks away, we are joined in studio with the two candidates running for governor. And they are incumbent Republican Governor Henry McMaster and former 1st District Congressman Joe Cunningham, a Democrat. The Libertarian candidate Morgan Bruce Reeves did not meet our criteria to participate in the debate, which you can find at scetv.org/elections. Before we begin tonight, there are some ground rules. Each candidate will have the opportunity to make a 1-minute opening statement, and from there they will have 90 seconds to answer the questions. If necessary, I will allow for a 1-minute rebuttal. Candidates drew names when they arrived for starting order, and Governor McMaster, we'll start with your opening statement.
Thank you very much, and I'm glad to be here. First Lady Peggy is glad to be here, and we appreciate everybody tuning in. I would like to say that Peggy and I have enjoyed very much serving as First Lady and Governor of South Carolina. This is a great, great, beautiful state. We were born here, our children were born here, and we got 2 grandchildren just got born here. But we've had some great successes, but we've also had some unusual things. We've had to battle Washington the whole time. I've never seen so many bad ideas come out of one place in such a short period of time in all my life. But beside that, we were able to prosper, and we've cut income taxes for the first time. We've had record capital investment. We've paid teachers more. We're paying law enforcement officers more, and we are going to continue doing that. It would be the greatest honor that we could have to continue serving as Governor and First Lady of South Carolina. We ask for your vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Governor. Congressman?
Thank you. And good evening. Good evening to the people at home watching. Thank you, Governor McMaster, for being here. I'm a father. I have a 4-year-old son named Boone, and I'm concerned about the state of South Carolina and the way it's going. And just like you watching at home, I'm sick and tired of the divisiveness. I'm also sick and tired of the extremists in politics, just like Governor McMaster. I'm running for governor to expand freedom in South Carolina, not restrict it. I want women to have the freedom to control their very own bodies. I want our veterans to have the freedom to use marijuana when they come back from serving our country. I want to legalize sports betting. I want to take all that money. I want to pay our teachers finally what they deserve. And I want to fix our roads on top of that. I think Governor has had his chance over 40 years in service. It's time for a new generation of leadership.
Thank you, Congressman. And the first question does go to you, Congressman. A stricter abortion bill has failed to make it out of the state legislature. This follows the Dobbs decision in June. The current 6-week abortion ban law on the books is blocked by the state Supreme Court as it decides the law's constitutionality following last week's arguments before the court. What should abortion law look like in South Carolina?
Quite simply, I think it was fine the way before under Roe v. Wade. And quite pointedly, I trust women. I trust women to make their own health care decisions. And Governor McMaster doesn't. And that's the clear contrast between the two people you have on stage here tonight. Because Governor McMaster wants to ban all abortions and have no exceptions for rape or for incest or even for the life of the mother. Folks, his position is the most egregious form of government overreach you could imagine. I mean, just think about it. If politicians are able to come into your doctor's offices, what could they not do? That's why the consequences of this election are so dire, because if an abortion ban comes to the governor's desk without exceptions, he'll sign it, and I'll veto it. And that is the key difference between the options that you have here in South Carolina tonight.
Governor, your response?
Well, the problem with that is Mr. Cunningham knows no such bill is going to ever reach my desk. We've never had a bill like that in South Carolina. What Mr. Cunningham is for is pre-Roe, and as we know, that allowed abortions up to 24 weeks. That is 6 months. That is 6 months that Roe allowed abortions for any reason or no reason at all. That is the radical position. We know when that heart starts beating. at 6 to 8 weeks. We know that pain is felt from sometime 15 to 19, but none of the bills that are pending right now do what he said. I'm confident that what is going to happen is that our legislators will continue to work as they have been doing, and they will come up with a bill, if they come up with one at all. If not, we have the pain capable and the heartbeat bill, both of which have all the exceptions. But I believe they will come up with a bill that is acceptable to most of the people of the state. That is the goal of what they're doing.
Did you want to respond to
Yeah,
anything?
I'm going to respond. You know, earlier today, I stood beside a friend of mine named Fran. And Fran was raped and impregnated at age 12. And she was impregnated right before the Roe decision came out. But then after it came out, it gave her access to health care and be able to terminate that pregnancy. She was 88 pounds. She's a 12-year-old girl. She was scared. But she had access to make her own choices, and she had the freedom to do that. And Governor McMaster has advocated for abortion ban without exceptions. That's what he said in the past. So tonight, South Carolina, he has the opportunity to tell you if a bill comes to his desk without exceptions, Governor McMaster, will you veto it?
Mr. Congressman, we're not going to have you guys ask each other questions.
He has an opportunity to tell the voters and be square with them. And I think that's what you hear. He will veto, or he will sign a bill without exceptions. Right. I would veto it.
Just to clarify, we're asking the questions, and the next question is to you, Governor. Economists and business leaders are forecasting a recession in 2023. How would you help South Carolinians weather this storm as they are already feeling the pain from inflation and higher prices?
I would continue to do what we have been doing, and that is by building. But let me just say, most of what Joe Cunningham just said is dead wrong, and he knows better, and he's trying to scare people, and I think it's a bad service to the people to continue with that line of irresponsible charges and accusations. What he said is not correct. Now, what we will do is what we have been doing. We have had, even since Mr. Biden took office, now he has been an obstacle, and we've had to fight him tooth and nail. We've had, I think, 5 or 6 lawsuits trying to keep them from disrupting business in South Carolina. But this year right now, we have a record of capital investment for our people. It is over $5 billion. We have never done that before. What else have we done? We've cut taxes. Do you know that the income tax rates in South Carolina have never been cut before? We cut them this time from 7%. It's going to go down to 6%. We've got more people working right now than we've ever had before. We have more money in our trust funds. They're filled up than we've ever had before. We've also, for the last 4 years, cut taxes for the unemployment insurance. I have the endorsement of the National Federation of Independent Businesses. They're small businesses. I also have the endorsement of about 70%, 75% or so of all of our sheriffs and solicitors for law enforcement. My goal is to keep this state safe so the people can work. The most important thing we do is education, and we'll get to that in a minute.
Thank you, Governor. Congressman?
Yeah, I just want to clarify that Governor McMaster had an opportunity to say that he would veto a bill without exceptions. Folks, when Governor McMaster said he wanted to do away with exceptions, believe him when he said it the first time. But when it comes to our economy, last year, when gas prices were skyrocketing, and I felt them at the pumps as well. I felt them at the grocery store. But we called on Governor McMaster to temporarily suspend the gas tax here in South Carolina, just like other states were doing. This wasn't a partisan solution. Republican governor down in Georgia did the same thing, temporarily suspended it. But Governor McMaster would not suspend the gas tax. That would have provided immediate relief for folks at home, and also would not have jeopardized any types of building projects because we had so much money come in through the bipartisan infrastructure deal or COVID relief. The fact is, folks, we want to eliminate the state income tax because South Carolina has the highest state income tax rate in the entire Southeast. And with all due respect to Governor McMaster, he's had over 40 years in politics to eliminate it. You look around at states like Tennessee and Florida and Texas, they're seeing unprecedented economic growth. Folks, we can be that economic lighthouse for businesses that will either want to grow or expand into South Carolina. but we have to have new ideas and we have to have a new vision.
Rebuttal, Governor.
Well, one way that you have expansion and growth is the way we did it, and that is by letting the people work. Now, Mr. Cunningham called in the middle of the pandemic, he called for a statewide mask mandate. That would have disrupted the lives of the people. He also was in favor of all of these vaccine mandates that the Biden administration put on us. It is true, Joe. You said September the 10th, 2021. When I'll tell you what you said. You said that my fighting those vaccine mandates, and that was the one that was on 100 or more employees in any business. That one, you said that my opposition to that was going to kill people in South Carolina. I'll have you know that case, we took that case, we had to fight Mr. Biden again, went to the U.S. Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said we were right. They said that was unconstitutional. What Mr. Cunningham was calling for was something that's unconstitutional and would disrupt business in South Carolina.
Thank you, Governor. Andy Shane has the next question of the Congressman.
He invoked my name. Did I get to respond to that?
There's a rebuttal. We can't rebut rebuttals, Congressman.
Okay. Congressman Cunningham, you have called for an elimination of the state income tax. If you can get the legislature to approve it, how do we make up for the lost revenue?
Of course, and that's a great question, and I'm happy to get to that. I want to clarify the record that I am against vaccine mandates, and I have been because it's your body, it's your choice, and politicians need to be consistent and let people make their own health care decisions. Governor McMaster doesn't see that. But let's be clear about the record as well on COVID. Governor, you closed schools during the COVID pandemic. You also closed businesses. You even closed boat ramps. Folks, we understand that South Carolina, we had one of the lowest vaccine distribution rates in the entire country. The history of how Governor McMaster handled COVID, we've written on tombstones throughout our state. As it relates to the state income tax, what we propose are new streams of revenue. Legalizing marijuana, legalizing sports betting. And we also have to eliminate these corporate handouts that Governor McMaster has given to his campaign donors, like David Tepper, up in Rock Hill, where we spent $35 million of taxpayer money on an interstate exchange to nowhere. He's had so many bad deals like that go south, and we have industries and companies that are polluting our waters and picking our pockets. We need a new vision for South Carolina. And we can eliminate the state income tax and make up for the money by seeing unprecedented growth here in our state, just like they have in others like Texas and Florida.
Well, we're not going to have unprecedented growth if we do what Mr. Cunningham wanted to do, and that was allow those vaccine mandates to go onto the National Guard, go on all these companies, to go on healthcare people. I mean, that's how you ruin an economy. And if you need any proof of that, just look around at other states around the country. That's what they did. That's what North Carolina did. That's what Virginia did. They're Democrats. He's a Democrat. He'd have done the same thing, and he said he would do that. As far as the state income tax, I'll remind you again that this is the first time our state income tax has ever been cut in the history of South Carolina. It went in 1927, at 5%, it was raised to 7%, I think, in 59. It's been there ever since, until I and others got behind it and we reduced it. We want to reduce it more, but that is a good start and the economy will boom. As far as Mr. Tepper, there you go again, Joe. We didn't lose any money on that. We built an interchange. We put it ahead of schedule. We're putting them ahead of schedule everywhere we can. We're putting them ahead of schedule, those in roads on I-85, I-95, and I-26. You heard Christy Hall say, we're putting $2 billion into widening those roads. And we're doing it ahead of schedule, about 6 years ahead of schedule. He didn't get a penny from the taxpayers. Whatever tax credits he's got to pay back because he didn't do what he said he was going to do. South Carolina is booming because we got a consistent hand on the throttle. We got a great team that's working together to see that the people of our state get jobs, get good paying jobs, and that's how you prosper.
$35 million was pissed away on an interstate exchange to nowhere. And all it simply did was enhance the property of one of Governor McMaster's campaign donors, David Tepper. And so we'd ask Governor McMaster if he would will you give back the money that your campaign took from David Tepper in exchange for that tax break?
He didn't get any tax money.
Will you give that money back? It was an interstate exchange system. It was built to enhance the value of his property, and taxpayers are on the hooks for it now, folks. That's the difference. that we need a strong governor who will stand up to anybody and everybody, so long as it means standing up for South Carolina. Folks, we shouldn't have to bribe businesses to come to our great state. We're the best state in the country. We have the best people in the world. And I don't believe that we should have corporate handouts to billionaires like David Tepper. I think they should want to come here on their own volition. And if we have great schools, if we have great roads, which, by the way, we're dead last, businesses will want to move here, and existing businesses will want to expand.
Next question to the governor.
Governor McMaster, we have an ongoing teacher shortage here in South Carolina. So what would you do to recruit and retain teachers, especially in higher poverty and more rural areas of the state?
Well, that's a good question, and it's hard to get them into those rural areas. That's something we've been working on for a long time, and sometimes we can get the teachers to go there, but they don't stay because there's nothing to do. It's a rural area, and they'd rather be somewhere around a city. But I think we got to have the best teachers in the whole country in South Carolina. I don't want to pay them just to meet the southeastern average. I'd like to be way above that. In the time that I've been in office, we have raised teacher pay $10,000. That's not enough. We need to do more. But we're doing everything we can for teachers. In addition, and back to York County, that's one of the fastest growing places that they need more schools. They have more schools coming up than most anything. But we have to meet that demand. I have a task force that's working right now. It's retention and recruitment and retention is headed by a number of people who are, Barbara Nielsen is one, and their job is to determine exactly what else we can do. But we've raised the pay. We have law enforcement officers in the schools. I got law enforcement officers, a trained, certified, armed law enforcement officer in now over 900, going on 1,000 schools in South Carolina out of about 1,200 or so. We had less than 400, somewhere around 300 when I started. We also have a mental health counselor, and we're working to find a way with Prisma and McLeod Health and Health and Human Services to have an emergency room for mental health. We was trying to start it in Florence or Marion County. We got a lot we can do to help the teachers.
Congressman.
Yeah, look, this is one of the most pressing issues in our entire state. And a special session was called, which is normally reserved for emergencies, whether it be hurricane relief or otherwise, or the most pressing issues. But it wasn't called for paying our teachers more, or fixing our roads, or doing something about our high crime rate. It's called to rip away the freedoms of women. And folks, this teacher shortage crisis that is going on is being felt by everyone. And some of us feel it more than others. I know that when I drop my 4.5-year-old son off at school and the door swings open and I see a brand new teacher, my heart kind of sinks a bit. Because I think about the bonds that my son has formed with that teacher that has left. And I think about him having to start over from scratch. Folks, our teachers deserve a lot more than what they're getting. And I want a 10% raise for all teachers across the board. And I want to get the starting salary up to $50,000 a year by the end of my administration. And teachers are feeling betrayed by Governor McMaster and by politicians in Columbia. They're leaving in droves because of it. The same reason that most people leave their jobs, because they're disrespected, they're underpaid, and they're overworked. I've gone across the state, sitting down with teachers, doing roundtables, and what they're telling me is that politicians, career politicians, have failed them.
Governor McMaster, rebuttal.
We've already raised that pay. It's not enough, but we raised it that $10,000 that Joe's talking about, and we're going to raise it some more. And we're going to do it a lot sooner than what he said. Teachers, all of us remember our teachers. They are a great influence in our lives, and I can assure everyone listening that we are going to do, we're aware of it, we're analyzing, we're bringing everything that we can to bear on it, because if we don't have the best teachers in the country, then we're going to be short changing our beautiful children, which is that's where our future is, and everything ought to be geared towards their future.
Congressman, next question's for you. Do you support someone being able to purchase a gun in this state even if a background check is not completed?
Listen, we have the highest crime rate after a Governor McMaster has been serving for almost 6 years. And part of that problem, part of it, it's very complex and there's a lot of moving parts, but part of that problem is the bad people with guns. People getting their hands on firearms that should not have them. And I was proud to co-sponsor a bill when I was in Congress that closed the Charleston loophole. And what that loophole is if after 3 days of doing a background check, if that background check is not completed, the seller can go ahead and sell the gun anyways. I'm just of the belief that if you start a background check, you should finish it. And most people know that it's called the Charleston loophole because of a monster named Dylan Roof, who went to purchase a firearm. His background check was not completed, and they sold it to him anyways. And then he went into Mother Emanuel Church and murdered 9 people while their heads were bowed in prayer. Folks, I'm a gun owner. I've got my concealed weapon permit. I grew up around guns. Again, it's not the good people with guns that bother me. It's the bad people with guns. And I just feel like if you start a background check, you should finish it. That's just responsibility.
Governor, your response?
Well, that's right. The bad people have the guns, but most of these proposals you hear from some that want to ignore the Second Amendment, it would end up taking guns from only the good people, because the bad people can find ways to steal them or get them anyway. One thing that the background checks, with the computer capability we have these days, there is no excuse on earth why those background checks can't be almost instantaneous. And the Charleston situation, tragic, no doubt about it. I was presiding over the Senate when Senator Pinckney was there. And one of the best speeches I think I've ever heard was one he made about body cameras. As a result of that, we've got body cameras, and I'd like to have more, but they're expensive. We'd like to have more for everyone. But we got a revolving door in our state. A lot of it lands at the feet of our magistrates. I think we have about 250 or 60 magistrates. They're the ones typically that set bonds unless they're very violent crimes, in which case it goes to a circuit judge. But there are constitutional restraints there. But what's happening is they're setting too low a bond, or they're taking a small surety bond and just walking away. So I asked the Department of Insurance to go back and review the rules and regulations, and let's shut down these bailed bondsmen who are not following the rules and are not seeing that the rules imposed by the court are following. And also, we got to increase the penalties as they repeat the crime. We'll
get more into crime in a moment, sir.
Penalties.
Did you need a rebuttal there, Congressman?
Yeah, sure. And I reject this notion that we have to choose between respecting the Second Amendment and having common sense gun safety laws. I believe that we can have both. You know, after Senator Pinckney was murdered, you know, I was in Congress. I was on the floor of the U.S. House of Representatives, and his widow was up in the gallery watching down as I brought Republicans on board to pass that bill closing the Charleston loophole. South Carolina is also one of 2 states that don't have a hate crimes bill. And we are missing out on so much economic opportunity, but it's also the morality of it as well. Listen, folks, our state finds itself at the bottom of every single list we want to be at the top of. I agree with Governor McMaster that we need stiffer penalties and some bond reform. But the fact is, these judges that are letting criminals out into the streets have been appointed by Governor McMaster. These are his judges, and it's his crime rate that we're suffering through.
Thank you, Congressman. Governor, we're going to stick with criminal justice reform. There were House-led legislative efforts to make reforms to the criminal justice system, especially following the protests in the summer of 2020 in South Carolina that included improving policing standards, a bill that was signed into law this year. But the House also approved bills to reform drug sentencing in line with federal law and to be tougher on hate crimes offenders through penalty enhancements. Meanwhile, civil asset forfeiture reforms have gone nowhere. Which, if any, of these bills would you support? What kind of criminal justice reforms would you support?
Well, I think there are a lot of good ideas in there, and as I mentioned, about 70% of the sheriffs and solicitors in the state have endorsed my candidacy, and one reason for that may be that I've worked with a lot of them over the years. 4 years as United States Attorney, appointed by President Reagan, and 8 years elected by the people, 2 terms as Attorney General. We have got to do all we can to see that these criminals don't have guns. And the way to do that is to enhance the laws, as you mentioned. There are a lot of folks. There's a man running for, it's a Democrat running for the governor up in Pennsylvania who wants to empty out half the jails. That kind of attitude is dangerous, and it is causing death and misery. We need to have reform. We need to enhance the penalties. But the main thing is we have to see that we're catching these people. Because you can put whatever penalty you want on an offense, and if when they're caught, the criminal doesn't think he's going to be caught, and then he thinks if he does get caught, he's going to be let out on bond and he can disappear. And if they catch him for that, then he maybe go to trial, maybe he'll get convicted, maybe not, or maybe the jury will let him off. But we have to be sure that we're going to have the sheriffs and the police to have the techniques and the equipment that they need to catch him. And Joe Cunningham voted against Tim Scott's bill in the Congress. It would have provided that.
Congressman, can you respond to the question about criminal justice reforms?
Yeah, it's simply not true, Governor. Tim Scott's bill never made it out of the Senate, so I never had the opportunity to vote on it. And I think you should know that. And folks, if you're sitting at home worried about our crime rate and wondering what is Governor McMaster's crime plan, you're living it right now, because South Carolina has the highest crime rate we've ever had in our state's history. And that's under almost 6 years of Governor Henry McMaster and 8 years that he served as our state's Attorney General, folks. Our crime rate in South Carolina is higher than New York City's. And that's all under Governor Henry McMaster, because, listen, the governor's catch and release program on violent offenders is clearly not working. And every single person in this state should feel safe when their kids walk out the door and they go to church, or they go to a mall, or they go to a movie theater. And right now, they have something to be concerned about. You know, there's a man named James White who was arrested for attempted murder of a security guard. And a few days after, he was released by a judge you appointed, Governor. And while he was out, he murdered a woman who was standing outside of a bar. Folks, our crime rate is out of control, and something has to be done about it. And look, our law enforcement needs support, and they need more resources, and that's exactly what I'll provide to them.
Some folks will say just about anything to get elected, it seems to me. But Joe says he never had an opportunity to vote on Tim Scott's bill. That's right, the bill was in the Senate, but the identical bill to Tim Scott's was put in the House, and you did not vote for that one. You voted for Nancy Pelosi's bill that was going to eliminate qualified immunity for law enforcement officers and not let them get the deals on the military surplus and all of that. I've read that bill that Joe voted for. And it was an attack on the police, and it was viewed as such, and that's why the International Association, the Chiefs of Police, and all the other organizations that studied it supported Tim Scott's bill and not the one Joe voted for, which was Nancy Pelosi's bill. And also, I just want to remind everybody, when we started off, when I came into office, we had somewhere around 300, maybe less, of these officers, trained armed police officers in the schools all day, every day. Now we're approaching 1,000, and we're going to have them in every school to make those children safe.
Thank you, Governor. Andy,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, you can't rebuttal, Congressman. We talked about this, but Andy has the next question to you.
Yeah.
Okay. Congressman, many in law enforcement do not want to legalize marijuana, even for medical use. You've discussed, of course, one of your campaign issues is legalizing marijuana. How do you convince law enforcement, lawmakers who would need to change the law, as well as their constituents who have doubts about this? How would you convince them that this is the right thing to do?
Yeah, great question. And a few things. First and foremost, I voted on a bill that would ban chokeholds and ban no-knock warrants. Some of the things that Governor McMaster, I believe, supported. And he wants to bring up Nancy Pelosi. The fact is that I took over 900 votes while I was in Congress. And around 8% of those votes were with Nancy Pelosi. I was ranked one of the most independent and one of the most bipartisan members of Congress. And that's exactly the kind of governor that I'm going to be. Independent and thinking for himself. I've talked to a lot of police officers who do want to legalize marijuana. And I've talked to a lot of veterans as well, folks. And call me old-fashioned, but I believe that if you put it all on the line to serve our country, and many of them come home from overseas with wounds that we can't always see, PTSD or otherwise. And many have told me that they need access to marijuana to be able to sleep at night. And these individuals went to Governor McMaster and asked him and begged him and pleaded with him to legalize medical marijuana so that they could get the medical treatment that they deserve. Governor McMaster turned his back on our veterans. So they called me. And I've been respecting them and advocating that they have the medical freedom that they deserve, because that's what they get whenever they serve our country with honor.
Governor McMaster, where do you stand on legalizing marijuana?
How about a rebuttal?
This is just a question to you.
This is still the same.
Okay.
This is the same question to you, Governor. But where do you stand on legalizing marijuana? Are there any instances where you see it could be available to South Carolinians?
Well, legalizing recreational marijuana is one thing. Medical marijuana, that's something else. Now, I presided over the Senate for 2 years, as you know, before I moved from lieutenant governor to governor. And I think just about every day, Tom Davis, senator from Beaufort, had someone there, and he was making the case for medical marijuana. That is a very interesting proposition. Now, law enforcement is foursquare opposed to it, but there may be some movement there, because there are people that cannot get relief anywhere else. So that's a completely different animal from recreational marijuana. And I look at it, what do you want to teach the children? How do we want to teach? Do you want to teach them that recreational marijuana is great, just go out and smoke a joint, or that voting on sports contests and horse racing? I mean, I think we got to be serious. Sports, yeah, but sport, you can have a lot of freedom without having an organized sports betting thing in South Carolina. I mean, that's gambling. A lot of people are opposed to it. And recreational marijuana, those are not the answers to the problems in South Carolina. Far from it. And I would just, on that issue, I would echo Congressman Clyburn when he said, and I quote, "You need to grow up, Joe."
Congressman, rebuttal.
Look, I'm not going to apologize for fighting for more freedom, especially for our veterans that Governor McMaster has slammed the door on. Because, Governor, I served on the Veterans Affairs Committee. I've heard countless stories. You know, the Marine who lost a limb from a roadside bomb and told me that every night when he laid his head down on his pillow, he had flashbacks of that bomb and was unable to go to sleep. And the only thing that allowed him to go to sleep at night was using marijuana. I think he deserves that freedom. And a lot of veterans who are scared of becoming addicted to opioids, why can't we give them that medical freedom? Now, 4 years ago, Governor McMaster stood on the stage with James Smith saying he was against medical marijuana. I support Senator Tom Davis' bill. I think we can do that. That's why 90% of Americans support it as well. But we have career politicians that have become so disconnected from where the rest of the country and where the rest of the state is. I want to move our state forward and take it into the future and out of the past.
Thank you, Congressman. Andy has a question to you, Governor.
Okay.
Can I rebut that?
No, you're rebutting rebuttals again.
Oh, sorry.
We're just losing track of who's getting the first question. But Andy has a question to you, Governor.
All right. There are concerns that just like with the abortion ruling that the Supreme Court issued earlier this year, that the court could also reverse the gay marriage precedent that it passed. South Carolina law currently bans gay marriage as well as the state constitution. If the court reverses the gay marriage ruling that it has in the past and throws it back to the states, would you support legislation that would eliminate the ban on gay marriage and also allow voters to vote on to rescind the amendment in the Constitution?
Well, gay marriage is in our Constitution, it is not allowed, and under our state law, it is not allowed. I would follow state law, whatever the state law is, but maybe I'm old-fashioned, but I think that marriage ought to be between a man and a woman, just like I think that boys ought to play in boys' sports and girls ought to play in girls' sports. But I mean, you have to have some common sense in this arena, which seems to be changing all the time. But I think that our traditions, I think, are strong, and I think they're there for a reason. Back to the veterans for a minute. Nobody honors our veterans more than I do. I am a veteran, by the way, and we have. Didn't stay in long enough to get retirement, but we have eliminated the income tax on retirement pay for every veteran in this state, whether they live here now or move here later. Also at the Department of Employment and Workforce, we prioritize the applications and the interest of voters. We reach out to the veterans to try to help them. And why is that? And every time I talk to these new businesses that are looking to come here, I tell them this is a military state with 8 military bases. I signed the first agreement with the United States Army about a month ago where enlistees or people in the Army, when they muster out, they will get 5 job interviews in South Carolina. That's what we think about veterans.
Thank you, Governor. Congressman.
Yeah, wow. For those of you who are just tuning in, it's 2022 and Governor McMaster wants to ban same-sex marriage. You just heard that tonight, folks. We have politicians that have been in government so long and become so calcified in their beliefs. And Governor McMaster has been a politician literally longer than I've been alive. And he's been taking our state backwards the entire time. Governor McMaster has been leading South Carolina into the 1950s since the 1980s. Folks, this campaign that we're running is a campaign ran on freedom. And I don't care who you are or who you love. I don't think it's government's role to be getting in the middle of that. And I don't think it's politicians' role to be ripping away freedoms from people, and women who just want to make their very own healthcare decisions. As it relates to veterans and taking care of them, we could expand Medicaid and provide healthcare to tens of thousands of veterans. And the governor could do that just with the flip of his pen. I won't hesitate for a second to expand Medicaid on day one to make sure that healthcare is expanded. And here's the thing. For those of you who have private insurance as well, your rates will go down because the pool will be expanded.
Governor, rebuttal.
Oh yes, I don't care who you love or you don't love or who you want to live with or what you want to do. That's your business. But I think marriage is a special institution, and that designation ought to be reserved for a man and a woman. That's what I think. And as far as taking South Carolina backwards, well, Joe, you must be about the only one on earth who thinks that, because everybody else is coming to South Carolina. They're coming from all over the world to invest in the people of South Carolina, in this place. And as I say, I've already announced just announcements on companies coming in to hire our people. They've already invested over $5.2 billion this year, and this year is not over. That has broken every record that we've ever had. We got more people working. People are moving that want to be here, and to say that we're going backwards would certainly be news to them, because it is not a fact. We're a booming. We're getting stronger every day, and I'm going to do everything I can to see that we continue doing that.
Thank you, Governor. Congressman, this question to you. Do you believe our elections are safe, secure, and accurate, and will you accept the certified election results of the November 8th election in our state?
Yeah, look, I believe that the peaceful transfer of power is a cornerstone of our democracy. And look, there are ways in which we can improve our elections. I voted on a bill in Congress that would end gerrymandering. I don't believe that politicians ought to be drawing lines to pick their voters. I think voters should be able to pick their politicians. Governor McMaster signed a bill that's being challenged right now because it gerrymanders all the districts. And look, folks, it's ripping our democracy apart at its very fabric. And I've seen it firsthand in Washington, D.C. What politicians do when the only fear that they have is losing the primary. And once they get to the primary, the general election is all set. Folks, I believe in automatic voter registration, and I believe that we should get away with, or do away with straight ticket voting. It just increases partisanship. I think we're one of 5 states that has that. We have a long ways to go here in South Carolina, on a lot of lists, and democracy is one of those, folks. We can have safe and secure elections and bring people together, but it has to start with reforming our elections.
And Congressman, you did say you will accept the results. Is that correct?
That's right.
Okay. Governor, to you, same question.
Same question.
The question,
Sure.
will you accept the results of the November 8th election, and do you believe our elections are safe, secure, and accurate?
I'll accept the results, and I am confident that our elections are going to be safe and secure because we just finished election reform. And one of the things we did, we allowed 2 weeks of early voting, but we also, we kept that you have to have a witness on your absentee ballot, and you can only be absentee for certain reasons. Now, that's the one we had to fight with the local judge with, and again, the Supreme Court backed us up on that in the last election where we kept that requirement there. But, and we also require audits. We also require the paper to be saved. It's electronic, and you have a paper copy of the ballot that you stick in there. The experts say that the box that would allow some sort of internet access is not even in these machines. We've done everything we can to be sure that our machines are working and that people can get to vote easier by giving them 2 weeks to go vote with no excuse at all. But as far as straight ticket voting, Joe, you can vote straight ticket if you want to, or you don't have to punch the button. You can vote eeny, meeny, miny, mo if you want. You vote however you want in South Carolina right now. Again, I'm afraid Joe is misinformed on a lot. And also, when we signed that bill, who was standing right by me in the governor's office? Trav Robinson, who's the chairman of the Democratic Party. It's a good bill. Everybody's happy with it. I think we're in great shape.
Rebuttal, Congressman.
Yeah, I agree with the 2 weeks of early voting is a good start. I think it needs to be a little bit more. But I believe that we need to end gerrymandering. Wouldn't you agree, Governor?
Sure. Congressman, let's not ask questions. We're asking questions.
Again, it's ripping apart our democracy. And every single voter, every person who walks into a voting booth should have every bit of confidence that their vote matters. And I've talked to so many people throughout our state that feel like, you know, I'm voting in this congressional seat or this state Senate seat, but I don't know if it matters or not because the scales have been imbalanced. And politicians have put the thumb on their scales. Career politicians, like Governor Henry McMaster. Again, I would have vetoed that bill that cut up our maps and gerrymandering to one of the worst gerrymander maps in the entire country. Straight ticket voting needs to be eliminated, needs to be done away with. Again, this only increases partisanship, and the divisiveness that we're seeing is a direct result of all of that.
Thank you, Congressman. Governor, the next question is to you. You have backed President Donald Trump. Where do you agree and where do you disagree with the former president?
Well, I agree with him on cutting taxes. He did that, and it worked. The economy was booming. We were all independent. Our friends were confident in our support and friendship, and our enemies were petrified. And you notice Mr. Putin took, what did he go into, Crimea when Mr. Obama was there, then nothing for 4 years, and now he's back in there again. So, but I disagreed with President Trump on the offshore drilling and also the offshore testing, and told him so. And they finally retracted that, but not after we had to make a pretty good case. But I also had an executive order to all of my agencies not to permit anyone seeking to build or install any device that could be used for offshore drilling on the shore or for seismic testing. That is an order to the executive agencies right now.
And Congressman Cunningham, likewise, with what issues do you agree with President Biden on, and what matters do you not support of his?
Yeah, look, I agree with what President Biden did recently with expunging the records of low-level drug offenders and letting them out of prison. Again, I want to legalize marijuana. I'd love to do that on the state level as well with low-level drug offenders, because I believe that police officers are using way too much time to go after nonviolent marijuana users. Governor McMaster wants to lock up veterans who use marijuana. I don't. That's just a difference in priorities. As far as what I disagree with Governor McMaster on, I disagree. I mean,
President Biden.
I got some disagreements with Governor McMaster as well. I disagree with how President Biden pulled out of Afghanistan. I think that turned out to be a disaster. Also disagree with how he's handling our border crisis right now. And look, folks, maybe a Democrat, but I'm not a cheerleader. I was the first Democrat nationwide to say that President Biden should not run for re-election. I was the first Democrat nationwide to tell Speaker Nancy Pelosi that I would not vote for her for Speaker. And I've stood up to President Trump as well. That's what it means to be an independent and bipartisan, folks. And that's what our country needs more of. We don't have enough elected officials who will be able to move the ball down the field and not care who gets credit. I'm concerned about making South Carolina safer and making our state more prosperous. And I'll work with anyone to get that done.
And Governor, you have a rebuttal to that?
No, sir.
And he has the next question to Congressman Cunningham.
All right. We all know sports gambling is becoming popular nationwide. You really can't avoid missing it if you watch a football game with all the commercials that are out there. You have advocated for allowing sports gambling, sports betting in South Carolina. A lot of folks are going to have concerns about that. Some lawmakers are going to have concerns about that. How do you convince, again, the lawmakers who would need to approve this, as well as their constituents who may have doubts?
Yeah. Is there a question in there?
No, that was my question. How would you convince them?
Yeah.
They're going to, if they worry about
I get where you're going. I get where you're going, Andy. Yeah. I mean, look, the truth is, this is about freedom. And this is about giving South Carolinians more freedom. And, this may be news to Governor McMaster, but this is already going on anyways. People are using marijuana anyways. It's about, if it's going on anyways, the state might as well regulate it, tax it, make some money off it, and give that money to our teachers or fix our roads, which are dead last in our country, and also the second most dangerous. And there's appetite for this. I know Senator Tom Davis ran point on the medical marijuana bill, but there's also Republicans supporting sports betting. And again, I don't care who comes up with these ideas, and I don't really care who gets credit. I just want to move our state forward. I want to bring our state out of the past and into the future. And that just requires new ideas. Folks at home have been watching my opponent's TV ads for several months now. I challenge you to think of one new idea that you've seen from this governor, or why he believes he's entitled to another 4 years in office. We'll fire football coaches after a couple losing seasons. So why do we keep electing the same old politicians when they have no new ideas? That's the essence of our campaign. We're running a campaign of new ideas versus his campaign of no ideas.
Well, a lot of people do things in other states that we are not going to do. And I just don't see how, of all the things that we're doing and doing well, we're getting them people employed. I've frozen the tuition at our universities. We've quadrupled the amount of scholarships to go to college. We have put in $79 million for scholarships to go to technical college. We put in money for every poor child in the state to go to 4K, to go to 4-year kindergarten. I mean, we are doing things for new things. We have a cyber project going on right now. This started when then President Caslin of the university brought a group, nobody's ever heard of it, called Jack Sajak or something like that. Brought it down from West Point. And we had a meeting at the University of South Carolina. And since then, we've expanded. We're putting money into the Dreamport in Aiken. We've got collaborations going on with Fort Gordon, Georgia, where the Department of Defense has headquartered their cyber initiatives. We are one of two states in the country that requires computer training for students to get out of high school. One of two, we in Arkansas. And we did it first, I think. And Asa Hutchinson, the governor, came here to celebrate that. But we're doing well. I listened to Congressman Cunningham, and it sounds like the state's falling apart. If so, why are we booming?
But what is your view on allowing sports gambling?
No, we don't. That's not the answer to anything. Neither is. Look at the children. What does that tell the children? Isn't there some other way we can make money by building businesses, getting people educated and trained, and having them working? That's how you do it.
Yeah, I mean, we had the lottery, and again, these things are already going on anyways. I'm sure they're happening in your rental homes, Governor McMaster. But again, this comes down to freedom. And there are so many people who just want to place a bet on a football game on Saturday or Sunday, and they're doing it illegally. And why is the state missing out on this critical source of revenue? You know, if we want to eliminate the state income tax, like I want to do, then we've got to fill those coffers. And we got to find the money to do the things that our state needs to do. Again, you know, I could ask the viewers at home whether or not you're better off now than you were 6 years ago. Because judging from the statistics, again, we're dead last in roads, and they're also the second most dangerous. Teacher pay is at or near the bottom, along with our health care. This just requires a new vision, folks, and that's what our campaign is bringing.
So far this year, there have been 15 weather climate-related events with losses of more than $1 billion in the United States. Most recently, Hurricane Ian, which struck South Carolina after devastating parts of Florida. Do you believe that climate change is fueling these storms, strengthening these storms and making them more frequent? And what can be done to help combat this?
I don't know what is causing it, but they're certainly becoming more frequent. I've spent 6 years now at the Emergency Management Division. I think every year we go out there. Well, by the way, we have the National Guard, the Department of Transportation, the Highway Patrol, everybody, DNR, everyone in between, to analyze and see what we can do to be ready. And we got a great team, and we've been ready, and this last hurricane was no exception. But I don't know what's causing it, but I do know that they seem to be more frequent. That's what we've seen. But all we can do is, we can't stop it. All we can do is try to be smart about what we put into the air and what we put into the water. And it's because of that several years ago I called for the creation of something called the Floodwater Commission. It is a magnificent group of scientists and professors and experts in all things ocean, land, water, and air. It was headed by General Tom Mulliken. It was about a 150-page document. One of the recommendations was that we have a resilience office, which I have now created. It is a cabinet agency, and its charge is to see what we can do to combat this changing and violent climate. And they have talking about reefs or offshore, planting grass in this sweet grass or some kind of grass in a lot of the areas, a lot of very practical things. And not long ago, they planted 2 million trees.
Out of time for you there, Governor. Congressman, climate change?
Yeah, I mean, Governor, I was on that task force. I think our office, when I was in Congress, got like one phone call. That's not the solution. I mean, these task forces are not doing anything. Like your task force on crime or on teacher pay. I mean, here we are, we're a coastal state. And if we're not sure what's causing these events, we sure as hell should find out. Otherwise, we're going to be subjected to this year after year after year. And folks, I can't believe, again, it's 2022, and I have to stand up here and say that I believe that climate change is real. And I believe it's a threat. And not just to our coastal areas, but to the entire state. And folks, when we look at a threat like this, I like to view this as an opportunity. An opportunity to lead, for South Carolina to step up and lead for once and be first, not last. There are some short-term actions that should be taken, including building up our infrastructure. And I know that when there was an infrastructure bill that came through the state that would have repaired our roads, Governor McMaster vetoed it. I would have signed it, folks, because we need that vision. There are also long-term solutions as well. And that includes looking to move to the renewable energy resources, electric cars, vehicles, doing what we can. It's not going to happen overnight, but we need to start looking at that economic opportunity that exists with electric vehicles, solar panels, and those new industries. That's the kind of vision that I have, and that's the kind of vision I'll take into the governor's mansion.
Thank you, Congressman. Governor.
Yes, I'm aware of all that, and that is one reason that I had, I think, the first in the nation electric vehicle summit in Greenville a couple of weeks ago. We had people from all over the country. We had car companies there. It was very exciting. Also, I'm the chairman of the Southern States Energy Board. We know it's going to take a lot of energy to do that powering. I've also issued an executive order to get the Department of Transportation, the Department of Motor Vehicles, the other agencies that bear on the issue of electric vehicles and the charging stations and all of that. And they're at work now to have a plan. We are doing many new things. We are on the cutting edge, I believe, and that is one reason that people are coming to South Carolina. They want a vacation. We had last year. We had 3 PGA golf matches right straight in a row, one month, and had one just the other day down in Congress. This is a beautiful state.
Thank you, Governor. We're almost out of time here. I have a 30-second question for both of you. We're going to start with Congressman Cunningham. If elected, what will be your first priority in office on day one?
I'll expand Medicaid on day one and create 40,000 new jobs in the process. That's why 38 other states have already done it, folks. Because it'll inject billions of dollars into our economy. It'll expand health care to hundreds of thousands of people. And it'll give health insurance to our veterans, people who have given so much for our country. I'm also laser focused on giving our teachers more money so they can stay in the classroom, because it's heartbreaking to hear the stories of teachers leaving the classroom because they can't afford rent or their mortgage.
Governor, first day.
Expanding Medicaid, that is what that means is more and more federal entanglement. We've got enough. I had to fight President Biden with his federal entanglements, with his vaccine mandates and all of that my opponent here supported, although he denies it now. We have 3 pillars of our strength: our economy, our environment, and our education. Of those 3, education is the most important. We need to take great steps now, and we're doing it.
Thank you, Governor. Do you have a quick rebuttal there? Good. Okay.
Yeah, look,
sorry.
Mike Pence.
I'm sorry.
No, you asked me. Mike Pence in Indiana expanded Medicaid. It's a great idea. That's why Democrats and Republicans have done it. If he would put people first instead of politics, then we'd be in much better shape.
Congressman, thank you. I'm sorry about that. And thank you to all of our candidates for joining us tonight. And thanks to Andy Shane of the Post and Courier. We will be back here on November 2nd at 7 p.m. for the Superintendent of Education debate. I'm Gavin Jackson, and from all of us here at ETV, thanks for tuning in. Good night.